Or the last session, we looked at introducing the 5 new rules for inner peace, and specifically we examined rule 1, which is I am deserving of care and I'm capable of caring for myself. And we looked at how our need for care arises from the inevitable humps and bumps of life. This is just unavoidable. And how our programming, our evolutionary negativity bias steers us towards danger, to be more alert and focused on danger than it does peace, because survival is more important than happiness. And we looked at how we can very easily deny these experiences, and that this sort of denial of our own experience can lead to suffering, and it can lead to disconnection as well. Disconnection from ourselves and disconnection from other people. And then we looked lastly at how we can contribute a lot of our own suffering through resisting it. And quite often this is the largest part of what we suffer with, is this resistance to what is happening. Usually assuming that this moment should be different to what it is in some way, or this shouldn't have happened this way. And in that way, we're fighting with what already is the case. And that this is where rule 1 meets rule 2. And rule 2 is, each step I take is an opportunity for growth. There are no wrong turns. And this points to the idea that we must accept and let go of the past to be able to enable ourselves to flourish in the present and in the future. And it's not to ignore the past or deny the past or deny our responsibilities from the past. But it suggests that how we focus on the past will determine our level of peace. And if we can focus more energy on the things that we can change, rather than getting lost in the mind-made stories about the things we can't change. And I just want to touch briefly on this theory of alignment. And in this case, it's aligning what we think, how we demonstrate what we think through our actions and behaviors, and how reality happens, the rules of nature. And if we get any one of those out of balance or out of sync, then we will experience the difference in suffering. If we think a certain way but act in a different way, and that's easily done, and we, when we're subconsciously deceiving ourselves, we might say or want to feel a certain way, but actually we feel a particular different way. And a good character example of this is Catherine Tate's Lauren Cooper, the Am I Bothered character. I don't know if you've seen that show. When she says, I'm not bothered, when clearly she's very bothered. And I think to some more subtle degree, we all have a go at that ourselves. And in that, we're not aligned. We're not aligning what we think with how we act. And even if we do get those two aligned, if those two aren't aligned with reality, with how the world works, then we will suffer again. And my example for this is how we often naturally assume that certain things will make us happy. And I think I certainly still fall for this trap, especially with the amount of marketing and stuff that goes on. That this next watch or this next computer, this next house, this next car, whatever it is, some sort of material possession will bring us happiness. So we think it will bring us happiness. We act in a way to pursue this possession. But when we get it, we might be a little bit happier for a short period of time, but it very much washes away quite quickly, and then it's the next thing. We might be familiar with that process, and that's because the reality is happiness isn't in that object. It's not in that, you know. So this is alignment. This is aligning what we think, how we act, and actually reality itself. Now, this misalignment, this doesn't make us bad or wrong people. We're all doing it to some degree, and none of us are perfect. And it's just another layer of conditioning. And really, this is what about Rule 4 is about. So I'll come back to this in another week. The reason I want to talk about it now is because what I'm about to say is really obvious. You know, what we're talking about today is so obvious that we forget it. And we certainly don't live and act in accordance with this rule. So a good question to highlight this is, if we just take a moment to ponder this question: do I believe that wishing the past to be different will change it in any way? Do I believe that wishing the past to be different will change it in any way? And I think when we think about it intellectually, we understand on a very mental level that we cannot change the past. We cannot wish the past to be different to what it is. And we know that. We can't travel back in time. And hopefully we all recognize that on an intellectual level. But, you know, a little deeper down in the area of emotions and the reality of our day-to-day experience, we get caught in unhealthy emotional relationships to the past. So if we're really honest with ourselves, we have to admit that somewhere in our mind, somewhere in our beliefs, is the idea or the belief that wishing the past to be different will make it so. And it's in this belief that we lose our peace. Now, where does this come from? We have to look at our, you know, what is the emotional response that we're dealing with? It's regret and guilt. And these are perfectly normal emotions. And they come about when we realize or believe that we've caused harm to ourselves or other people. And these are actually very useful emotional signposts that buffer us in the direction of our values. And they can be useful motivators for change, and they can help us work and live together and cooperate. So in an ideal world, as an ideal response, we have an event and we would reflect on what's happened. We would then make the appropriate adjustments, and then we move forward and move on. But this isn't how we live, and it's not how we treat ourselves, and it's not how we treat each other. We take an emotion like regret or guilt and we chew on it. We ruminate, and that's a beautiful word. It comes from the animals like cows, that they're called ruminants because they chew. They chew a lot on the grass. When they take a mouthful of grass, they'll chew and chew and chew. Then they swallow the grass. It digests in their first stomach for a little while. Then they regurgitate the grass and chew on it again and again. And then they swallow it again. And that's a little bit gross, but it's really beneficial for the cows to absorb the nutrients of grass. But if we're doing that with events about the past, things that have happened, usually things that we don't like, something we didn't like has happened and it's appeared on that radar and we're chewing on it. We might even get caught in beating ourselves up for it repeatedly. And then we get lost in it. And the getting lost in it has a feedback cycle. So We mentally get lost in this rumination. Our body will start to mirror what we're thinking through feelings and sensations. And then the mind will feed off the body's sensations. So we can get caught in a bit of a whirlpool of this sort of negativity. Usually happens sort of in the middle of the night. And we can get stuck in what ifs. What if I'd have done this? What if this had happened? What if that had happened? And we run these like countless alternative scenarios. And this is linked directly to a loss of perspective or a lack of perspective. So there's a story about a Chinese farmer, and that explains this quite well. So there was once a Chinese farmer whose horse ran away. And that evening, all his neighbours came round and commiserated him and said, "We're so sorry you've lost your horse. This must be so unfortunate." And the farmer just simply replied, "Maybe." And the next day, the horse turned up again, and with it, it had brought 7 other wild horses. So the neighbours came round the next evening and were like, "Wow, how great. This is fabulous news. You've now got 8 horses. And the farmer again said, "Maybe." And the following day, the farmer's son was breaking in the horses and was thrown off a horse and broke his leg. So the neighbours came round that night and were like, "This is really bad news. Your son's broke his leg. What are you going to do?" And the farmer's like, "Well, maybe." And the following day, the war breaks out in the country, and the conscription come round and start trying to conscribe all the young men for the army and the war. And they overlook the son because of his broken leg. So the neighbours come round yet again, celebrating and congratulating the farmer because his son doesn't have to go to war. So this points to this limited perspective, or this loss of perspective that we take when we pounce on a single event. And we take a single event in time and we label it as good or bad. But we're simply not qualified to judge that event based on the past and this moment, because we don't know how it's going to turn out. And the problem with this loss of perspective is we start to then define ourselves by the event. We start to define our sense of character by what we've done. And this is the kind of shame that believes we need to punish ourselves for something that we actually have no control over, which is the past. So this moves us into what is true, what is true about reality. And this is the most obvious thing, but it's so easy to forget. And it's that every moment is instantly washed away into the past. One moment is replaced by another. And we cannot grab the past. As soon as it arises, it falls away. And it's only our mind that lays anchor into this experience as it naturally passes. And this can happen with good and upsetting scenarios. A good scenario will hold on to it and suffer as it drifts off into the past because we want to repeat that experience. And then with negative or upsetting situations, we'll push them away. And in pushing them, we're being stuck to them as well. So really, time is grace that just washes this away. It frees us moment by moment and allows us to start again and again and again. And it is a precious gift if we can use it. But this what ifing, we've all been stuck in it in the past. It's a hard one to shake. But if we can learn to treat each mistake or each situation as a moment of learning or a possible tool for growth, then we can become unstoppable forces of good. And I've seen this enough in my own life to rely on it to be true. So where possible, can we leave this moment open and not wrap it up in labels and judgments, because we simply don't know how it's going to turn out. And by leaving it open, we are living in peace with it. Now, this isn't always easy, especially if we've experienced traumatic events in our lives. It'll take patience and effort and care, and we may even need professional help. So we're not expected just to flick this habit of a lifetime off. But how does this play out in our mindfulness practice? And that's what we're doing here today. And this is the beautiful thing, because every time we practice, every time we meditate, we can practice this. We can practice letting go, and we can practice allowing our experience to unfold. Because inevitably, and it still happens to experienced meditators as well as beginners, is we get caught in this thinking that we're doing it wrong, that our experience in some way is wrong. Because we have an intention and a direction and a hope for our meditation. But what actually happens is this, and we expect our meditation to go in a straight line, but it never does. We go left to right. We get distracted, we get lost and washed away in thinking and thoughts. And then all of a sudden, we treat that moment like we've done something wrong with it. But this is where we get to practice and say, okay, well, this has arisen. I'm now aware that I was distracted. And then we let that go. And we stay focused on the present, because if we get wrapped up in judgments about what's just happened, then we'll spend the next 5 minutes in that judgment. And if we do that, then we can just let that go as well. So there's always an ability to step back and notice. And it's the noticing that is the only thing we're required to do. Noticing if we've got lost in thinking, noticing if there's a funny sensation in the body. And sometimes we only notice once it's too late and we've been gone for 5, 10 or 20 minutes. Or we might notice every few seconds, and this will change day by day and moment by moment. And a nice little analogy for our meditation practice is, imagine we're sort of on a top floor window, and we chuck a feather out of the window. And if we try and predict in advance where that feather's going to land, then every time the feather moves, we're going to experience some form of suffering. If the wind blows it that way or makes us upset, and then if it comes closer to the midline again, we'll be happy. But if we can simply watch the feather, watch it do its little dance all the way to the ground, then we can enjoy the process. And it's going to land where it lands anyway. And this is really the number one thing, I think, that gets in the way of our meditation, is this idea or this belief that it should go a certain way. We forecast how we think it should be, and then when our experience inevitably doesn't match up with that, then we suffer. So our practice today is going to be really about noticing. It's noticing and allowing. And I guess we'll go for about 20 minutes or so with this one. And I'm just going to take a minute because I've been talking a lot and my throat's gone a bit dry. So we will start the practice. So finding a position that's comfortable. And can we find a posture that is as natural as possible? Because sometimes the first thing we do is set a posture that we think we should be doing. So can we just sit back and relax a little bit more? Let ourselves be at ease in our body. And bring into mind our intention for this practice, and it's simply to notice what is happening. So we can't do it wrong. And bring into mind our motivation for the practice. Why am I here today? And just being open to whatever comes up. Maybe one thing, maybe lots of things, maybe there's layers of motivation, maybe nothing's coming up. And then we can bring our awareness a little bit closer to the breath. Finding the breath in the body. So where is it that we feel the breath the most in the body? Is it in the nose, or the throat, or the chest, or the belly? Or is it somewhere else completely? If we can't notice the breath, then notice the not noticing. So our only job now is just to focus on the breath, on the sensations of the breath as it comes in and out of the body. No expectation. No preconceptions. And not judging ourselves when we find that the mind has wandered into past or future or analysis. We simply return our awareness to this breathing body, however we recognize it. And we can deepen the breath just very slightly and start to bring an even flow to the breath. So just softly encouraging the breath to be equal in and out. We may wish to use counting to 3 or 4 on the inhale, and then matching that on the exhale. So we're only focused on the sensations of breathing and balancing. It's a nice even flow of breathing. Noticing if distraction arises, and gently ushering our awareness back onto this even, balanced flow of breathing. In maintaining this awareness of the breath, but letting go of any attempt to control or count, just allowing the breath to return to its natural flow. And we're noticing the breath. Noticing if it's short or long, smooth or stuttery. Deep or shallow. Warm or cold. And allowing the breath just to be as it is with each in-breath and each out-breath. So maintaining an awareness of the breath, can we expand our awareness to include the whole body? Can we feel our body here? Or any particular part of the body? Noticing the most obvious sensation. And the next obvious sensation. Are there any more subtle sensations present? And with an awareness of this breathing body, awareness of sensations of the body, can we open our awareness again to include the space around our body? Can we notice our environment? Noticing any sounds that are appearing. Notice how the sound arises and falls away all by itself. Noticing how the sensations arise and fall away. And noticing how the breath arises and falls away. So now we are noticing whatever arises. Whether it's awareness of the breath, awareness of sensation, awareness of sounds, or even awareness of thoughts and thinking. And there's no such thing as a distraction now. There are no wrong turns, because whatever we're noticing, we're noticing. And if we feel like we've wandered off for 1 minute or 5 minutes, then we notice now that that's happened and it's gone. And our awareness stays present. The temptation of thought is sometimes too irresistible, and before we know it, we're sailing down the river, then that is our experience, and we notice that. Open to whatever experience arises in this moment. Like the feather. And if we notice that we've become distracted, can we notice what it feels like? Can we notice any commentary that we issue in response to it? Now, noticing is often accompanied by some form of self-criticism. Oh, I'm distracted again. Oh, I've got lost in thought again. Oh, I'm doing it wrong. Oh, I don't understand. And if that is what we notice, then that's what we notice. And if at any time we feel like we need to, we can always bring our awareness a little closer to the breath or a little closer to sensation or a little closer to sounds, a little closer to space. We're just paying relaxed attention to this ever-changing flow of experience. Arising and falling. And we can begin to return our awareness to the breath, paying attention to the sensations of breathing, paying attention to sensations in the body, and the space around us. And as we approach the end of the practice, taking a moment to just place the hand on the chest or to take hold of the opposite hand. Just feeling the warmth of our own touch. As we dedicate some of the peace of this practice to those most in need of peace right now. Allowing this peace to touch anyone in need. And that includes ourselves. And taking the last couple of moments just to maybe have a little wiggle in the chair or move the hands and feet. To start to slowly open the eyes if they've been closed. To animate the body again. And allowing the sound of the gong to signal the end of the practice, but not our awareness.